Hello, people. Welcome to another edition of Friday Night Knives. And this is another Fixed Blade Friday here on A Dose of Drew. And this is the CRKT Graham Design Razel Nax, which is quite the mouthful. It is an interesting little hand axe. Quite honestly, with this sort of chisel and axe kind of action in there. It actually reminds me of some fairly old style bits. But let's get into that in a minute. First things first, some standardized measurements here. It is nearly 11 inches long with with approximately 4 inches of blade length, slightly less. That's quite a lot of, we'll do this way, quite a lot of handle on this little bad boy to be perfectly honest. If you go from there, that handle's right in the 6.5 plus range. So quite a bit. This choke with a choke up point. Very, very, very nice. A couple of other things without the sheath, which it does come with. 11.15 ounces. Here is the sheath. 13.3 ounces with the sheath. So almost about 3/4 of a pound, just a little bit less, which is, strangely enough, a very, very useful weight for this tool. This is really amazing. But a couple of standard measurements here. We'll do the Spider Go sandwich. As you can see, much bigger than the paramilitary too. And the Para 3. Para 3 is basically only slightly larger than the handle. Somewhat large. This is a pretty styling fixed blade, I have to admit. And in fact, as a matter of Fixed Blade Fridays, we will do a little bit. But first things first, it's just a blur. As you can see, much bigger, not just any leak, but a random leak. So there you can go. And you can see that. And of course, without having to get too many others in here, whatever. Anyway, all right. So as a Fixed Blade Friday, and since most of it has, give it one little fixed blade. This is it compared to the Civivi Midwatch. Fairly large. In fact, the Midwatch is barely bigger than the handle space. All right, so very, 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 very cool. First things first on the design. Have a pull the dot. I think it's pull the dot. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Nope, not a pull the dot. No little lips on there. Very good retention sheath. It does have a hole pattern that matches up to like an ulti clip or something like that. So there is quite a bit of carrying designs on this. For me, this is more of a yard tool. The design of this is both new and honestly somewhat old. This to me, as I use it, screams ancient type of tool. The sheer ability, now it's not quite the same as an axe, so you can get very similar power as a small hatchet with this little space right here, as well as being able to do chisel-like motions and that sort of thing. It's not the best sharpening job I've ever seen. In fact, I've already had to take this once to my own bit, so you'll see it's a little bit smoother than most types of it. But it had a decent edge. It was just off-centered, and I wanted it to be more even. So it has a good edge. I believe this is 1095 steel. So simple carbon steel with an oxide, basically the forge oxide on it. And the ability to get in and do like pruning, small pruning on relatively large pruning on some larger branches, or small pruning, or anything like that would also take a chisel type bit where you can slide it along, going along the surface, right? Absolutely something that is doable. The choke up allows you to do lots of other close things if you need to do things like feather stick, or you're just really more directed and deliberate maneuvering, it supports it. And in fact, it's very, very cool this way. And you can really get all sorts of leverage, but you put something like a lanyard on the bottom here and you get way back and you get a whole lot, that's a lot of leverage to do a lot of chopping tasks. While there is the usability as a weapon, I wouldn't go that far. For me, this is more like the idea of the kind of thing you may want to use to hollow out a canoe, right? Like, this is that kind of, having the chisel, being able to get that point in there, hack it down, and work on the inside of something with the curve and the chisel allows you to do things like hollow something out. This is the kind of thing I feel like I would want to make, like a small canoe or a bull or something like that. It's an incredibly useful small hand tool that if I had a home, I don't have a home with property like that. I currently rent, for all those who don't know. Yay. If I had something like that, this would be more useful in its design to me. In fact, I may end up dropping this as a gift to someone who recently bought a home. Simply because I think they're gardening, they do all sorts of stuff. This would be the kind of tool that they may find useful. They may want more of a machete. I'll end up having to talk to that person, see if it really fits. But that brings me to the aesthetics, because the aesthetics of this are really interesting. It looks like a tool. It doesn't look quite like what it is. You know, if it was just this sort of worn cliffy or sheep's foot blade, it would be interesting. But with this sort of chisel front, it brings a lot of kind of interesting looks while still having, this little wedge right here that kind of brings the same aesthetic vibe, while providing a great deal of functionality. And it's small, it's relatively thin in the handle for a lot of stuff, which makes it a little bit strange for long tasks. But you want to chop kindling or something like that, if you're one of those people who needs to use wood to heat your home, this would be a fantastic little hatchet or little hand axe for doing things like chopping kindling, like cedar kindling, or splitting off a little bit, where you have a whole lot of control. And you can even use, as far as batoning goes, being able to baton down or something like that. I think this would be fantastic. Bushcraft around the house, very versatile little hand tool. And while big axes for big jobs are great, sometimes getting a hatchet or like a backpack axe, for those who have used those, it can be difficult. A lot of times they'll have a back spike or something that makes it easier, but it can be difficult to find something that is a little bit lighter or do some of the smaller tasks. You end up having to have a couple of edged things in addition to your knife. You have like a knife, a big knife, an axe, and a small knife or something like that. And this really can take the place of some of that while giving you a better range on your knife choice. And that's with the mechanics on this one. I mean, really, it's this nice curved handle, brings the blade front below your hand, much like how an axe does. So when you swing, the power's down. So the mechanics of it are great when it comes to things like choke up, and basically it's part of the design. The design mechanics on this one do very good. And when it comes to noteworthy points, this is unusual. This is the kind of tool you didn't know you needed, but might just do the job you needed to get done. And that makes it, I don't want to say it's unique, but it makes it unusual. It is noteworthy. It's definitely of note. And I really do feel like this reminds me of things like old stone hand axes and all sorts of other stuff from early sorts of, you see like archaeological digs with like actual stone tools, where they would have a stone like this and they would use it as a hand chopper or a smasher or something like that. Or even, dare I say, where you would have a branch and then actually lodge a wedge of rock or something into it and have that be on there so that it's going against the stick, where this would be part of the wood and that sort of thing. There's lots of ancient tools that resemble this shape, which not only leads me to believe it's may have been pre-invented. I mean, there's a lot of variations on it, but also the utility of it is really hard to question when it's been useful for literal eons. So that's always a really good point. And, you know, the intended purpose as a sort of all around the house small axe, where a hatchet or an axe might be too big of a job, but using something like a big solid, like a kitchen knife or something, is too light, or you don't want, you know, you don't have that. The in-between problem this solves is one that I have often came across when I did live on a farm and all that stuff when I was younger, chopping kindling, working on trees, pruning bushes, there's so much stuff that this can do that it would be handy for. And that's kind of where a lot of the other stuff comes in. It's really, really good. And honestly, I think this is $80. I could be wrong on that. Going off memory, I forgot to check that before I did the video. So it's right around 80. I think it's like 79 or something like that. Not exactly inexpensive, but it's a big chunk of steel. It's well heat treated, holds a decent edge. The fit and finish is pretty good. Plenty of room for lanyards to keep it on there. And it's, as long as you keep it out of moisture and take care of it, it's a tool that'll last you a long time. And with like 1095 and some of these oxides, you can actually get rust off and stuff and still have a very useful blade. It could be something you maneuver yourself. You may even get it as something you intend to continue working on, where you're going to take the oxide off, you know, flatten these out, make it a little bit more, instead of more rustic like it is now, make it a little more refined. There's plenty there. It wouldn't cost you much. The value on it is good. The cost isn't super high. It's a big chunk of steel. It's very affordable. It's not cheap. It's not expensive either, which presents a great value for the tool that it is. And that brings me to the expectations part and the request. I mean, the expectations, I expected this to be okay. Quite honestly, this blew me away with how versatile and useful it is. You need to cut cardboard, it will do it. This sucker will actually chew up cardboard with a good choke up. It's super thick, but it'll do it. I've used it to hack down a couple of my patio plants that were going bad and I need to get rid of them. Hacked them down in one swipe. Like, I was really impressed with how well this used. Like, I was able to take it on a horizontal swipe and top a dying plant in one chunk. And for those who know, it was a rosemary bush, which means it was a bit of a hardwood stem. For this thing, I mean, I took a swing at it, but it was a controlled swing that I was going to see how well it did, and it completely lopped off the entire top. Very, very, very useful. I honestly don't know what kind of requests I have. The 1095 helps keep the steel choice helps keeps it low. There's a fit and finish on the blade. They're trying to make it rustic. It seems like it just becomes an excuse to kind of do a piss poor job on the grind, to be perfectly honest. That grind is not even. It's really close, but it's not even. Is what it is. Some may like the aesthetics of I like the black, I like the oxide. I'm just not into the hammered look so much. Like, it'll get those pits in it after a few years of use. I don't know why I need to add them on ahead of time. But that's a personal preference for me. And I don't really have a request on it. This thing blew my mind with how useful it is. It exceeded all of my expectations by just being good. Quite literally. Just being good. For those who doubt my claims of its abilities, let's see if I can't see if I can maneuver this on camera. Not the easiest thing to go from the edge, but that's pretty smooth on the chisel top and pretty smooth on the main body of main bevel. So that's pretty good. And that's really hard. It's really hard to not recommend this, but very specific recommendation. This is a tool. Yes, you can use it for self-defense, and it would be wickedly effective and deadly, right? This is a relatively small thing that's got 1.5 pounds of weight with a serious wedge on the end and all of the businesses at the end, just like an axe. This will cleave, right? This will cleave meat, this will cleave wood, this will cleave all sorts of things. It really, really does have it as well as do it. But man, for small, rough woodworking jobs, pruning, a few other things, this is a great little tool. Yeah, there's a few things that are nitpicky for me. First things first, I really wish this was rounded and not a sharp. It's polished, right? It's polished smooth, but that's a pretty sharp edge. Yeah, it gives it kind of a cool aesthetic, but that edge should be rounded down. In fact, I would love it if, as part of this, there was a little bit of a pinch area. You kind of do if you needed to, but it'd be one of the few things that I could say is a design flaw, is this sharp edge right here where you start to go. But it's not on your finger. It's just, to me, that should have been rounded, bull-nosed a little bit more, rounded down just a hair bit more. That's really the biggest thing. The rest of it's hard to not. If you have a place where you can use this around your house, I bet you'll find more. If you like, I could use that to do this one task, you'll probably find at least 2 or 3 other things that this thing will do well once you have it. Once you feel it in hand. The only thing that I can say is I kind of wish it had its own lanyard. I'm ready to start using the mid-watch lanyard on this, if you know what I mean. Push that thing through and have me a new little lanyard. But anything that would loop would give this quite a bit of extra leverage. You could choke down a little bit more by having the lanyard, give yourself a little bit of leverage on there to give yourself more, but you don't really need it. The extra hand plus on here gives you tons of leverage. The weight all being out at the front there. In fact, this is going to be an interesting thing. But out of 11 ounces, about 7 of it, depending on where I put it, about 7 of it is out here. I'm leveraging that right there. Like if I go here, it's, if you want to know where the balance point is, it's right there. So if I were to do this, right, but I come out here, it's about 7 ounces of the weight. What does that mean? It's a little over 50% is all right here. Actually, all right here. It's all right there. There's that. In fact, it should make about 40, 60, right? That's, I don't know if you realize that. That's about 40, 60 in length here, and it's about 60, 40 in heaviness. So that's a pretty interesting little balance. And that is the balance point, by the way, is right up front here, right? Basically around your middle finger. Or if you're choked back right here, it's right around your index finger. This is where you get all of the maneuvering and ability from. And it's pretty cool. It's not, I wouldn't consider this a fantastic EDC blade, but an around the house or out bushcrafting tool, absolutely. It's not that expensive. It's something you can take with you, something that'll go and use. You can use quite a bit. It's, like I said, inexpensive. You may regret losing it, but you could probably replace it. And it is a unique and unique in today's market, but a unique and interesting design. That really gives it a whole lot of panache for me. This is design-wise great. Aesthetically, I like it. It looks like a tool. It looks like it has a job to do, and it feels like it. The mechanics of it are great. It feels like it wants to do chopping and other jobs. It feels very controllable and lots of different hand grips, tons of leverage, and everything else is done well. And it is unusual. It's obviously intended as a tool to do lots of different great jobs, or lots of jobs, not necessarily great, but well. And I mean, when it gets right down into it, it's not very expensive. It's a high value for if you're someone who's in the market. And if you're expecting it to be anything else, you should really just take a look at what you're expecting, because this is a Nax. It is a Razel. The original Razel was a mix between razor and chisel. And this is a razor chisel Nax, knife and axe, right? Like it's a little bit of both. And that makes it unusual. That makes it a really, really cool tool, and an unusual thing that has a lot to offer as a tool in a lot of different bushcraft, home stuff, kindling, a lot of tasks it can complete. And that makes it a pretty versatile and unusual blade. And that's where I'm going to leave this at. This is a great little knife. I'm not going to give it 5 stars. There's all sorts of things on fit and finish that this could be better at. So I'm going to give it 4 stars. Mostly because the design of this is so outstanding, and it's a good price. The aesthetics work, the mechanics, it's a fixed blade. It's really hard to mess that up, but you can. The intended purpose is not unclear at all. You know what this is meant to be, a tool of some sort, and it is very well done and lives up to expectations, and it seems to be a very high quality, and CRKT has a reputation for that. That makes it a really good blade. That really hits all the points that, for me and for this channel, give it a pretty solid foundation. There are fit and finish and attention to detail points that really keep it from being great. Even at its price point, for what it is, it's not enough. Unevenness all over, unevenness on the edge. You can't get the other grinds to match up for the life of the stupid thing. And even the secondary bevels don't match up. It's just relatively uneven. And quite honestly, I realize they're trying to make it look rustic, but it seems like all they're trying to do is cover up shoddy workmanship. And that's the biggest complaint I have about it. And it's the one thing that brings it down. Every little bit of the workmanship that is supposed to make it look rustic makes me feel like they just covered up being lazy in the forging process. I know it's not, there's designs and stuff that go with it, it just is what it is, where they try and make it look rustic. That's what it makes me feel like. And so that's going to be the 4 stars. This, honestly, this is a package piercer. It'll do it. It is a strand wrap slicer that I don't recommend it. Cardboard carver extraordinaire. Wood chopper. Chisel. Canoe maker. And it can, if needed be an envelope eviscerator, but it is not extraordinaire. More like an envelope chopper. So it does all that stuff, but it is not fantastic at all of them. It is much more as a tool and not as more of an around the house or a very dedicated tool for bushcraft and other things than it is an EDC. But that does not make it a bad buy or a bad tool. And that is 4 stars, highly recommended. CRKT. Graham Design, Razel Nax. Very recommendable for its purpose. And with that, you guys, I hope you liked this video. Please continue to engage below. And go ahead, take this video. Watch it twice. Comment as much as you like. Be mindful of side effects. Remember to like and subscribe. This has been your dose of Drew. I am said Drew. And you guys have the great rest of your night.